Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are thrilled to have you take time out of your schedules to join us for our third session of our three-part series, Women Taking Charge of Your Finances. Today, we are going to cover a number of topics in about a 45-minute session. I'm Mary Ellen Krieger. I'm a partner and director on our wealth management team, and I have the privilege of serving executive women, and I just love helping them make smart, informed decisions about their finances. And today I'm joined by my colleagues, Linda Kitchens and Teresa Greenup, and I'll let them introduce themselves in a few minutes. If you were able to join us for our first session in November, we talked about tying your financial goals to your values. And we also talked about the two sides of money, the emotional side and the technical side. And in our second session in December, we provided a glimpse into the financial planning process. And if you're curious, both of those sessions are recorded and available for playback, but you didn't need to listen to both those sessions in order to hopefully get some value out of today's session. So today we are going to cover three areas. We're going to cover investing, and we're going to talk about implementing that financial plan, and also monitoring and tracking your financial goals. And so before we get started, we'd like to start with a chat question. So hopefully our audience is willing and able to participate. So if you have the chat box open on your screen, we'd love to have you add as you're comfortable. We're curious to know, as we turn the calendar to 2024, what are your highest priority financial goals for this year? And as you're thinking about it and adding to the chat, I'll just share personally. My husband and I have two teenage daughters, and our eldest daughter is heading off to college this fall. So we are planning to help her evaluate some credit card options for emergencies, but also to start building her credit. And then we plan to have some money conversations over the next couple of months around budgeting for fun expenses, but also how she's going to pay for tuition, room, board, books, the important things. So that is on my financial checklist for 2024. So let me just view what's in the chat, see if people are pay off bills and debt. Yeah, that's always a high priority coming off the holiday season. Yeah, moving out and paying rent, that's a terrific goal. I know someday my two daughters will be in that boat as well. Debt, new job. Yep, terrific. So I want to invite the audience and encourage you as we go throughout our session today, please feel free to be active in the chat. It always makes the session more interactive and interesting. So thank you. And then Linda and Teresa, I'd like to ask you both to introduce yourselves, but as you're introducing yourselves, be curious to know if you're willing to share what are your personal 2024 high priority financial goals.
Sure, and I'll get started. Hi, everybody. I'm really happy to be with y'all today. And also welcome. It's so wonderful to have you joining our conversation. I'm Linda Kitchens, and I'm a wealth manager and a director and a partner here at Aspiriant and working out of our San Diego office. I am lucky enough to have found and spent my career in this fabulous profession. The first 30 years was a lot of fun. I wore a lot of hats and essentially got an MBA from the ground up as a co-founder of a smaller independent firm. And now at Aspiriant for the last 7 years, I am really enjoying being able to sort of narrow down and focus on what I love to do most, which is dig into helping clients with planning and think about how we can serve women's needs better. So before I share what my item is, I took the question a little bit differently. This is a rollover item for me. And so if you find yourself thinking about what didn't make it off last year's list, I just want to say that you're not alone. Forbes has done some research on this and on why people can't complete things, which happen to about 90% of us. And so I just thought I'd share some of the top reasons include maybe the idea that we're thinking too big about the goal. We're going to talk more about that as we move through the session today, that we're maybe not considering the why behind our goals. and the fact that we may not be ready for change, which I thought was interesting. So yeah, so I am really happy to share with you that my item that has carried over is funding a 529 college savings plan for my first granddaughter. Charlie was born in October of 2022. And, you know, this is my world, right? So, you know, come on, get off the dime. So I really stopped and thought about it. And I realized I was getting stalled a bit in the why. Family dynamics are complicated. It's a second marriage for my husband and I, and Charlotte was born to my stepdaughter. So there's 5 grandparents in the mix. All have some different ideas, and some are trying to control, not in a bad way, or coordinate efforts. So acknowledging all that, I realized, you know, this is not going to be a better result for Charlie if everyone must coordinate. So the support my husband and I are going to offer is going to be appreciated, as well as what anyone else does. So, and we'll welcome everybody to participate in the plan that we've established, and I'm happy to help them set up other accounts if that's what they want to do. But anyway, all good. So, thank you for the subject of this webinar, because I got to some of my January items early, and the application is out the door.
Great job, Linda. I'm Teresa Greenup. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm a fellow wealth manager and partner at Experian. A little bit about myself. I left a long career as an executive in corporate finance, really with a dream to move into personal finance and to have this conversation with women, to get women feeling confident about their personal finances. So thank you for being here today. This is really a dream for me. My goal for the year is to check out all of the budgeting apps. Having been in finance for so many years, I live and breathe in Excel. And so like a dinosaur, I was downloading all of my bank statements into Excel and manually categorizing all of my expenses a few times a year. And this year, I decided to check out one of the popular budgeting apps. I checked out Copilot on Apple, and I loved it. And so now I'm really into checking out all of the different apps and software for budgeting, and like a geek. And so that's what I'll be doing this year.
Terrific. Thank you for sharing, ladies. It's always, and thank you for sharing in the chat. It's always fun to see what is on people's checklist for the year. And along those same lines, Linda and Teresa, I'm curious to know, what are some of the top investment questions that you're hearing from women you're meeting with today?
Teresa, I'll jump in if that's okay. Get us started. You know, a couple come to mind, but I would say at this time, I'm hearing a lot. It goes like this. Seems like the market's been doing really well for a long time, and I've been fearful about jumping in. So I've been sitting in cash for a while and really worried about getting in at the wrong time. So, you know, it's really natural to worry. And what isn't quite so intuitive, but research backs this, is that you're best off putting money to work faster rather than trying to perfectly time the market, because in general, markets go up over time. So the time spent out of the market tends to trump mistiming the market. The truth is, and you've heard this before, you know, we don't know what's going to happen today, tomorrow, 3 months from now. No one has that crystal ball to perfectly time investments. But what we do know is that markets have continued to rise over longer periods of time. So if a longer time horizon matches your goals, you're better off being in than out. And I'm going to share a chart that will help illustrate this. Thank you. And don't worry if you can't see all of the numbers and all of the wording here. So what this represents is if you took $1,000 and invested it into the S&P 500, which is representative of the U.S. stock market back in 1990, the rust-colored bars represent what you would have at the end of the period in June of 2022. So 32 years. And in addition to that, it layers in the time that you spent in the market. So focusing on the far left bar, which is the investing and not touching it, not pulling anything out, you'd end up with $21,000 and almost more importantly, a return of about 10.2% annualized return. So each year over that period. And, that's what we'd expect from stocks over the long term, is something similar to that. So if you jump to, let's see, 2 bars over, okay, and that represents if you missed just the 5 single best days over that whole period, if you were out of the market the 5 best days over 32 years, and by the way, that's 11,680 days, you can see the impact. Instead, you have $13,000 and your return drops to roughly 8.6% per year. And I'm going to do one more real quick before we leave this chart. If you go 2 more further, that illustrates if you missed the best 25 days. And again, it's such a small percentage over the entire time period, right? So if you did that, you'd only have $4,500 and your return is even less than 5%. So I think this almost does a better job than I almost can with my words of just saying that, really, really 2 things. That number one, we can't time. I wish I could tell you those days. Wish I could tell you when they were going to happen, but we can't. And so so not being able to really time the market, staying invested really works. And by the way, that period includes, the .com sort of crisis, the financial crisis, right? The COVID downturn. So lots of periods in there, and still, as the markets tend to do over time, contributes a really healthy return. So thank you. Okay.
Yeah, and so that leads me to the other question that I hear quite frequently, and that is, am I taking on too much risk or not enough risk? There are 2 main ways to approach risk. One is from the technical or economic perspective. And here your tolerance for risk really relates to how much return you need to achieve and how much risk you can tolerate to achieve your goals, your short and long-term goals that we've talked about in earlier sessions. At the heart of all investing is that simple trade-off between risk and return. The higher level of return that you seek to achieve, generally speaking, the more risk you're going to have to tolerate to achieve that level of return. But markets are unpredictable. The part of investing that tends to get the most attention is the return side of the equation. People really think less about the risk side of the equation, but that's really as an important part of investing as the return. So how do we quantify risk? Really, that's in 2 ways. That's how much you could lose, but also how likely or how often your portfolio fluctuates. Those are 2 important measures of risk. And so the technical side of the equation seeks to determine how much risk you can tolerate to achieve your goals. And that changes as your goals change. For example, I serve a executive, extremely successful CEO. His family has worked with Aspiriant for decades. And when they first started working with us, their balance sheet was 7 figures. In the last couple of years, their balance sheet has grown to 9 figures. And so when we first started working with them, their goals centered around, can I retire comfortably? Can I afford to upsize my home? Can I afford to pay for my kids' college education? And now their goals in the last couple of years have shifted toward generational wealth. There are pockets of their balance sheet that are dedicated for their grandkids and their children and will last for decades to come. And so their tolerance for risk from a technical perspective has changed. But that's only one side of the equation. The other part of risk is your emotional tolerance for risk, and that is what helps you sleep at night. And so even though on paper you may be able to afford to take on more risk, there is the emotional aspect of what makes you feel comfortable and what fluctuation in your portfolio value can help you sleep at night. And so we, as investors, we have to balance the 2, because if we stray too far from what our emotional tolerance is, we may fail more quickly because we may be more likely to bail out of the market when the market doesn't perform well.
Thanks, ladies. So I think what I heard you both say is risk definitely isn't one size fits all. And I think many investors, when they hear the word risk, are thinking about the risk of the market going down and their investments losing value. But as you both point out, it's not just the risk of your assets going down in value, but it could also be just the risk, as Linda said, of missing out on returns or maybe investing too conservatively. It can also be the risk that your investments, frankly, aren't tied to the goals that you're trying to achieve, and then perhaps not invested appropriately. And Teresa, you brought up the emotional side of money, and I think it's a good segue to our first poll question. So Elizabeth, if you're able to launch that poll question, we're curious to know, audience, and of course there's no wrong answer here, and feel free to select all that apply, but we're curious to know what emotions first come to mind when you think about investing. Okay, good. We're starting to see the answers. And not surprising, we're seeing lots of these. So excitement, and we're seeing confidence, which is great, and gratitude. I think naturally women tend to associate investing with gratitude for being able to accumulate the funds to be able to invest. But we're also seeing some fear and anxiety and some intimidation as well. And these are all very natural and very common when we think about investing and we're working with women. And often what we say is it's important to acknowledge the emotions that you may be feeling when you're thinking about investing. So if you're feeling fear or anxiety or intimidation, can you talk with someone that you trust about those concerns? Name those emotions, figure out if those emotions are impeding your ability to make progress towards your financial goals. And if so, can you move past it so it's not a hindrance? And if you're feeling excitement and confidence, that's terrific. It's also important to consider the world of behavioral finance when making investment decisions. So oftentimes coming off of a terrific year like we had in 2023, where stocks and bonds both return double digits, it's possible that investors could be feeling overconfident and making decisions that are perhaps not in the best long-term interest. So emotions and investing go hand in hand, and it's just important to acknowledge how you might be feeling and how that might impact your investment decisions. So Elizabeth, if you can end the poll, let's see where we ended up. Not at all surprising, pretty much across the board. And intimidation was actually the highest one. And again, that's not surprising. That's what research shows, that women generally, and it's not necessarily just women, but women can tend to feel more intimidated by investing simply because we haven't had maybe as much experience in it. But the three of us at least are very much passionate about helping women get from maybe a feeling of fear and anxiety or intimidation to feeling highly confident. And hopefully you have someone trusted that can help you with that, or perhaps working with a professional advisor can be helpful. So thank you for sharing the poll. And now let's move on to the next question. Linda and Teresa, I'd like to know, when you're maybe meeting with a new client and you have the opportunity to review their existing portfolio, what are some of the common recommendations that you're making?
I'll get us started, Linda. So many of us are familiar with the concept of the benefit of diversification. And that's the concept that it's generally a good idea to sprinkle your investments across a broad variety of investments, whether it be geographically or by sector or in different stocks, so that you're not subject to the risk that any one of those individual stocks or geographies or sectors underperforms. So a lot of us have heard of this concept and are familiar with it. And many of us get started investing in a diversified way. So maybe you start with your 401k and you selected an off-the-shelf balanced, diversified portfolio from your 401k provider. But over time, that starts to become skewed. And so what we often see is that, as that 401k gets rolled over to an IRA, or we add a brokerage account, or maybe we got some stock from an employer, that when you put it all together, that the portfolio is not as well diversified. What we commonly see is when we look at things from a holistic perspective, there's often a very heavy concentration in US stocks. Typical in US investors tend to have a home country bias, or this belief that the United States will outperform the rest of the world, which may or may not be true, or maybe a concentration in that company stock has just grown over a long period of time. And so one of the most common changes we make right off the bat is to get better diversification in the portfolio.
Thank you, Teresa. Absolutely. And a number of things are coming to mind in my head. I think one I want to start with is circling back to kind of the question that I hear so much about, having a lot of cash. And in this environment where, savers again are rewarded, right? Because we can get 4 and 5% in cash equivalents these days, so people are saying, why shouldn't I just leave my funds there? And so it's true that you absolutely want to earn higher rates of interest on things like cash reserves. But if you're using cash equivalents as a substitute investment strategy, and by the way, those rates can change, right, daily. So when that environment changes, and it will again, you've really kind of, again, deferred that decision about when to invest, right, in other asset classes. And you're right, last year's a great example, because even though you could earn 5% on cash, balanced portfolios, did quite a bit better. So before leaving this comment, I wanted to give a couple suggestions, a couple ways that we are thinking about this. So if you, and maybe ways to actually get started. So if you've got cash and you have identified the investing strategy that matches your risk tolerance, and you know what you need to do to meet your goals. One idea is to diversify immediately, right? Owning different asset classes, excuse me, that don't correlate with each other will help protect you right away on day one. And the other is to dollar cost average in, which means to look at the total amount you want to invest and systematically feed it into the markets at a pre-established interval, like once a month, over maybe a 9 or 12-month period. So different ways to get going. And I wanted to share a quick client story as well. I had a client that received a really large signing bonus in January of last year and taking a new job. And as she was nearing the end of her career, this really represented the last one of these that she's going to receive. So between 22 being not a great year in the market and this being the last one, as a result, she really couldn't bring herself to get started investing. And so now she's got a lot of regret kind of looking back over the period. And so I reminded her of a couple things. One, that we put her funds in a higher yielding money market fund. So she's been earning some interest in the meantime. And that also that just because she's retiring soon, we're planning that she lives another 30 years. So she's got lots of time for her investments to grow and play out. So anyway, we got a dollar cost average in plan started about 4 months ago. And she feels like she's moving forward. She's letting go of that regret. And, is really comfortable with the way, these new funds are being managed in a risk way. So addressing that one item that we see quite a bit is those large cash balances. Another thing I wanted to mention, pardon me, I'm so sorry. Reflecting back on the concentrated position that Teresa brought up. Again, it's really easy for our executive women clients that we see they've accumulated that through work or, perhaps through an inheritance or a divorce settlement. And if your core financial plan is protected, you might have room for a concentration in a single stock. But if you're relying on that stock to fund your entire retirement and your other goals, we really want to drill down further and do some number crunching to figure out if you really can afford to take that risk. Invariably, there's going to be certain market environments where your position and quite possibly your whole portfolio will outperform, and those where it will underperform. And so this unpredictable and volatile nature can be damaging to your portfolio's potential, especially if you have goals to spend some of your capital, and the timing corresponds with underperformance in your concentrated position. That would lend to drawing capital out when your portfolio's down, which further reduces its ability to recover. So many times we find ourselves recommending a strategy to unwind the concentration over time thoughtfully and create, a more resilient portfolio that's designed, to weather all different market environments and also be more available there for the needs that you have planned.
Thanks, ladies. I think we all like to hear the term building a resilient portfolio that can withstand the inevitable ups and downs in the market. That sounds like something we all want. And I think our audience probably appreciates your commentary on what we all know to be true, which is diversification is really important. If you have a concentrated portfolio, diversifying that concentration can potentially be the best way to achieve your goals. But I also appreciate, Linda, your commentary on the dollar cost averaging strategy, because I think it's fairly common that a number of investors have cash on the sidelines today, particularly, as you said, with money market and CD rates being so attractive. But having a plan in place can hopefully take some of the emotion out of that decision. So if you could come up, as you said, with a dollar cost averaging strategy, you've taken away some of the emotion, and then you're simply just executing on the strategy that you've laid out. So hopefully that is an easier roadmap for people to follow if you do find yourself in that category of someone who potentially has more cash than you need on the sidelines today. So I know you guys have a wealth of other great ideas. So if we can just continue on this conversation, what else are you hearing and seeing from the women that you serve, and what other ideas do you have for consideration?
I just have a couple more to mention. A big part of investing holistically that gets less of a spotlight is what we call asset location. So that's understanding the investment characteristics of what you own or will own and how the sources of return are taxed, and then intentionally placing them in either retirement plans or tax deferred accounts or taxable accounts to take best advantage of reducing taxes. So a general rule of thumb is we aim to place assets generating the most income in retirement accounts so that clients are not taxed on that income when they're in their highest tax bracket years. So it's a really important component to consider. It can be a big driver of returns. So we often see that. And then finally, last tip for me, and probably should have mentioned it first, is just consolidation. I'm yet to meet a client who doesn't wish to simplify. And the intentional combining of like accounts where you can be so helpful to getting your arms around your financial life. It reduces what you have to keep track of, your mail, and also makes asset location or investing for tax efficiency much easier as well.
Thank you. I'm going to switch gears for our next question. In session 2 in December, we walked through goal exploration of a hypothetical client named Olivia, and we took it through Olivia's goal exploration through the building of a long-term financial plan. But we all know that sort of work can be valuable and impactful, but not as much if it is a sit on the shelf and forget about it plan. So I'm curious to know, how do you take a client's financial plan and really put it into action? How do you implement that plan so it can be most valuable to the clients you serve?
That's a great question, Mary Ellen, and I love that question at the beginning of the year. Everybody's got a lot of energy and is motivated to get their plans in motion. Like you said, any plan starts with identifying your goals and writing them down. And so so if you'll pull up the list that we put together for Olivia, the client, during our last webinar, we laid out all of our goals for Olivia, but even though this is only a list of 7 goals, it can feel daunting. Any one of these goals could take an entire year to accomplish. Reaching out to a geriatric care manager, for example, that could be a process that stretches out over the course of 6 months or a year. And so first and foremost is taking that list and prioritizing those goals. And so iteration number one was to just write down the goals, but iteration two was then to prioritize the goals. In this iteration, we then reprioritize the goals. We identified the goals that were most important to accomplish in the near term, and we set those as goals for now. We left the other goals to accomplish by year end or even into the next year. So we have to be really realistic about what we can accomplish, because like any plan, if you stretch yourself too far and you don't set realistic goals, you're just less likely to accomplish them. So take that list, whittle it down to what's most important, and then take it a step further. What is the next thing that you need to do to accomplish that first most prioritized goal on the list? And that'll get you closer to your implementing your plan.
Thanks, Teresa. Yeah, and thank you for showing exactly how to break that down, because it's really a big key. And then, you know, something else that we might add is finding an accountability partner. It's really helpful to have someone who understands your goals to check in with, and edit and adjust, right? These aren't set in stone. So it could be your spouse or a partner or a friend. Of course, you can also lean on your advisor. This is where a professional advisor can be really helpful. And you know what, also, if some time has passed and there's an item or items that you're not making progress on, it's good to take some time out and maybe figure out what's stopping you. It may be as simple as rebranding your action items. I had a client who realized she was, had a very negative connotation to the word budgeting. And we had an item, it was, work on budget. And so as a result, she wasn't making any progress in this area. And we broke it down further and renamed it to analyzing, or renamed her first step to analyzing annual credit card statements. And she's really excited to get going. It's bite-sized, she can do it, and she's kind of on the way. So is also the case with this goal, as Teresa mentioned just earlier, is it was too big. Other reasons worth exploring could be that you're really not maybe connecting with why it's important for you to spend time on that goal, or kind of, as some research suggests, maybe you're not ready for the change or something in that goal. Or it may just be that one needs to move out further, out to 2025 or beyond. But whatever the underlying reason is, it feels really good to get unstuck. So yeah, we encourage everyone to try to take a look at that, rearrange, reprioritize, move around, move off. On the flip side, it's also a great process to learn from what you are accomplishing and more about what motivates you. And so also a good time to recraft your list and include more of that.
That's terrific. And sometimes at the beginning of a meeting, we'll also list out the prior year accomplishments, because that can be very motivating for people to recall the work that was done in the prior year and all of the great things that they did accomplish. So that's a great tip, Linda. Audience, if you are willing, we are happy to see your comments as it relates to the action steps you're going to take this year, maybe as a result of listening to this call, or just something that you're going to do in the near term. And Linda and Teresa, maybe you can help our audience by giving us a few action items you think our audience would be well served to tackle in the near term.
Yeah, so going into the new year, most people completed their benefit elections at the end of last year, but most people can change their 401k contribution level anytime during the year. So it's a great goal to try to max out your 401k contribution level if you have a 401k or other retirement plan. This year, you can contribute $23,000 to a 401k if you have it, another $7,500 if you're 50 and older. And if your cash flow can support it, a lot of people now have access to after-tax contributions in their 401k. You can put away a whopping $69,000 combined in your 401k, or $76,000 if you're 50 or older. So excellent goal. The earlier you can do it in the year, the less painful it will be, the smaller the cuts from your paycheck every every month or bi-monthly. So great goal to make at the beginning of the year.
And, while you're logged into your 401k, make sure your beneficiary designations are up to date. Perhaps you've updated estate planning during the year, and maybe even if not, sometimes those things change. So while you're in there, it's just a great idea to check in on that, put your eyeballs on it, and, see what you think and make changes if you need to.
Yes, and if you haven't gotten around to it, it's a great time of year to reach out to an estate planning attorney if it's time to update your estate plan, or maybe create a new one if you haven't created one before. Maybe you've had kids, maybe your kids are grown, or life has changed. You've gone through marriage or divorce, and you need to revisit that estate plan. Even if you don't have the answers, make the appointment. A good estate planning attorney will help you come up with the answers to how you would like your estate distributed to take care of that. Another item that tends to go overlooked is insurance coverage, making sure that your life insurance, your health insurance, property insurance umbrella is reflective of your current net worth is really important. That tends to get overlooked.
Thanks, Teresa. Yeah. And, I think we'd probably be remiss if we didn't touch on, another really kind of crucial part, which is sort of monitoring and, tracking your finances periodically. And the start of the year is also a great time to do that. So if you have a partner, you could schedule some time together to sit down and take stock of your finances and craft out 2024 goals. So some tips on sort of preparing for a review, right? Print out your year-end investment account statements and just look at progress over the year, right? Check in on what contributions maybe you made, and also how account values have changed from the prior year. Your year-end pay stub is a wealth of information. Reflects not only what you've earned, but also how much you've paid in taxes, which would be good to note, add to your expense list, and also what you've saved into your 401k or 403b and other savings or investment options through your employer. And, note those totals. Also print out your year-end credit card statements and bank statements and review expenses at a high level, and you can note totals, or, if you want to drill down, of course, further and take a look at that. But also note if savings or checking balances are growing. If you've prepared a more formal financial plan and or a budget, check in and take a look at how much you spent and saved relative to your goals. So, by the way, there's no right or wrong or judgment to the numbers. We get asked that question quite a bit. What should I be spending or saving? It's really not about that. It's really understanding the reality is the key, because it puts the power back in your hands to decide, if you like how things are going, great. And if there's changes you wish to make, it gives you the opportunity to own that and be able to make those changes. So putting all these things together high level will give you a good picture of how the year went and, where you stand. And usually what falls out are some things to change or reevaluate. And then you're ready to reset for 2024. And it becomes a much easier process. You do it a time or two. And it almost becomes, well, of course, we like this stuff, so we look forward to it. But hopefully clients find it more engaging and looking forward to it as well.
Thanks, Linda. Appreciate it. Teresa, everyone on this call I know is a busy person with not a lot of time to spare. So do you have any time-saving tips to make executing on this financial checklist maybe easier or more efficient?
Yeah, this goes back to automating as much as you can in your plan. Particularly with respect to investing. So statistically speaking, women are really great at automating the savings piece, at stockpiling cash and putting it in an automated fashion into another account. But they're also statistically speaking less likely to get started investing. But they also make better investors once they do. So the more you can insert automation into the investment process, the more likely you are to succeed. And what does that look like? It means at the beginning of the year, look at what you have available in cash. take a look at what you need to set aside as a reserve for emergency spending or for other goals. And then with the amount that you designate as available for investment, set a plan, whether it's putting it all to work today or putting it all to work under a dollar cost averaging schedule like Linda referenced earlier today. Putting that plan in place at the beginning of the year takes the emotional aspect out of investing. So if you set that plan at the beginning of the year and you say that you would like to get it all to work by a certain date, you're more likely to accomplish that if you do it in an automated way.
That makes sense. Setting it up as much as possible on autopilot sounds great to me. So we are nearing time. I want to take this opportunity to thank our audience for your participation in the chat and for carving out time out of your schedules to be with us today. We hope you found the session valuable. If you're interested, you can access on demand all 3 of these sessions, so you can listen at your leisure. And thank you so much to WBC for giving us this opportunity. We are thrilled with our collaborative partnership, and thank you. Thanks, Linda and Teresa, for your great advice. I think we're all leaving here with some great tips to accomplish our financial goals in 2024. And we hope that 2024 for you personally is a year where you are organized and you can cross off a number of those lists on your financial checklist. And I also just want to encourage and invite everyone, if you'd like to please connect with us. You can connect with us by sending an email to our colleague, April, and she has shared her email in the chat. You should also be able to see it on the screen. Please find us on our website. We also have a podcast. You can find us on Money Tales for some really great conversations. And you can also follow us on our blog, Fathom. So thank you so much for being with us today. We've really enjoyed these sessions, and we hope that 2024 is a healthy and joyful year for everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.